when you understand something, it's very fast to understand them in a biological way. If you want to understand the brightness of afternoon, then we can understand it by comparing to the darkness of the night. If you only have the brightness of afternoon, we are not really aware of brightness. So most of people, when they're happy, they only look forward the happiness. So they are not really aware of unhappiness. But when they become unhappy, they understand how precious the happiness was. So when you figure out something, it's better to understand it with the comparison. They also talk about 36 methods. So when they talk about evilness, they talk about the virtue. And when you talk about the poorness, you also need to talk about rich people. And they also say the efforts to become rich is based on the facts of the poorness. So that in order not to be poor, you try to be rich. Like in South Korea, or the suffering, there are a few sufferings that we had. For example, colonization and also war, and also the hunger, the coldness, and also the starvation. So inside our heart, we don't even want to think about being colonized again, and even the war, we don't want to think about it, and also the starvation. People find it difficult to accept because of the trauma. About 60 to 80 years old people, the hunger and also the suffering that they went through, they have the trauma, and because of that, we try our best to live not in starvation and also not in hunger. We started having that kind of strong feeling because of that. And those things, if we think about them, the materialistic world, if we say we have achieved up to a certain level, that we are not going to be starving, that's we can also say that's a reflection of the past that we had. And so if we do not strengthen our children with the salvation and also suffering, and it's a question for me that if they would be able to bear the feelings or the suffering that they have, because I think everything has the reaction. And if I look at children right now, I don't think they are able to understand what is the poorness. And so if they do not live well, then people commit suicide. And so living poor life is not a bad thing. But only if you live a poor life, you try to become happy and you try to live happy. So the effort starts all from there. So if you become rich and if you have everything that you have, people who can achieve whatever they want to, they are not aware of what difficult thing it is, the poorness, and they take it easy, the richness, and so it's easy for them to lose. So when you think, you always have to think about the reactions and also the oppositeness. So when we say the supramundane wall, supramundane wall refers to the wall that's outside our mundane wall. This is a mundane wall, uh, and in Buddhist language, we call it the valley where people live. And how do they live? They they try to earn money and uh, they try to acquire positions that are higher than other people. So when you think about people trying to get the plastic surgery, I know why they do that. That's because they think they are ugly, and only if you are rich, prettier, or handsome, than other people you earn money. But then if you say it has got nothing to do with the amount of money you earn, then people will not start think about it. If you're a little more handsome than other people, a little better looking, then maybe you could be getting better marks at the interview, or even at if you come to television, then and also the eyelids, double eyelids for the interviews or the high nose. They say if you have a face like that, you can get better interview. But I don't think that's really. Mm. But the mundane wall. So what is supramundane wall? We call it we call it the mundane wall where we our life is based on the name and fortune, but in the valley of our life, for the name and fortune, for our power, money, and also for our name, they are the main thing in our life. Then what is supramundane world? You don't live because of that, and even if you have them, in the end, as to say, how much ever you do it, eventually it leads that. So in the end, it's all the same. No matter how much you do, in the end, it's the same. Some said in the Hanyang University college, she was admitted, and about four people with the 4 star, about people with 4 stars, they couldn't win against the small disease, and so when they were giving injection, he was making so much comments about the injection, and also when doctors. I wonder how he would have lived in an area where there were gunshots when he cannot even bear the injection. So we don't live our life based on the mundane world, but we live outside it. So we do not dare towards our uh, greed and also, but we will live outside it. And the saints, when they say they are holy, when we use the word holy, saint, we call them only if they are outside of all the mundane world. So when we learn the holiness, although we are not able to practice it, only if we believe that there's also a way that we can live our life happily outside those name and fortune, we call that belief. So it's a thought of the supramundane world. We are free from our attachments and greed, so we try to live outside it. So that's the gaining wisdom of supramundane world. So living outside our greed, that's the thought, that's the consciousness. If you desire to get this thought, then they remain in samadhi. So if our hurt, if my greed and if my arrogance is strong, and so if I am greedy and if I get anger when things doesn't go my way, then all the time you try to measure, will I win this way or that way? And when I go, sometimes when I travel at the airport, there's some duty-free center, and sometimes when I see you selecting, I find it so funny. You apply different colors and see if it suits you, and then you apply on your palm. So you're actually checking if the color is in line with your desire. So sometimes when I see, I understand that even the desire acts that way. And also people who drink well, I don't know the name of any alcohol, but when they go, they're able to know how many years old that liquor is. But so people like me, we don't know about the mundane wall, but about the supramundane wall, I think we come to know something. So even when we go and choose some commodity, you buy it in a mundane wall, whether it's cheap or expensive, or whether it's good or not good, and if the shopkeeper talks well or not. So you argue about all the things and purchase. But when we purchase, when you go to a shop and when you don't buy, it, it, it scares me if the person might be hurt if I don't buy. So I hope sometimes I would like to buy everything for that person so that in this cold weather she doesn't have to sit anymore out in the street. So people like me, when the people of the mundane world sees we are not really acting well, and also when we go and buy everything from one shop, then the next shop could become jealous. So sometimes I have nothing to buy in the next shop, but if the grandmother says it's $5, I cannot not buy. So I also buy something I don't need again. So the eye that I see, for me, the vegetables that they brought has more value than the money that I have, because I cannot borrow the money and eat, but I can borrow the vegetables and eat. So sometimes I think it's okay to give a little more money and buy. That's what I think. What about you? I think you do the same, right? What do you think? How about you? You find it same too? Don't just answer me in a way that you have to. If you don't think the same, then you can say no. So because of that, I cannot go to market with you together. I find it very uncomfortable. So if I go a little, I feel a little uncomfortable, so I just stand at the back. So the things that we measure, we are thinking whether it suits my desire. But then you have to balance your thoughts. If you don't balance your thoughts, oh, I went to monastery for 20 years, and if we ask, what have you been doing so far? You've been praying religiously, and you went to 5 different mountains and pray, and you went to Jeju Mountain, Jeju Hallyo Mountain and pray. So when we ask you what did you pray for the well-being of your children. And so when you pray for the well-being of your children, in Christianity, they believe that God is very grand. So you go to church to pray. Seems like they listen well, and then so even the religion, you follow your benefits. If you go here, If you go here, they even purchase things from your shop, so you go there. That's not even a religion, but that's just a small shop. So this herd, which keeps moving, that's why you should open your eyes like a tiger. Tiger, when it's looking at this object, it doesn't move at all. It runs to catch it. Even when it's running to catch it, the eyes is still on the object. It's fixed at the object. When it's running, the eye follow every movement. Even at running, how does it the the mustache of the tiger and also the rat and the cat, it guides its way against the objects of to hurt, but it's so fast that if it touches its mustache, then they can run away. The eye should be like whiskers of the tiger, but and also if you are friends with someone whose eyes are all white, and you also suffer even if it's small. Even if you have small eyes, you should only be friends with someone who has a fixed eyes. Even the eyesight moves together with your heart, and so if it keeps moving, then it means your heart is in a very complex situation. So those Tibetan people, when they study, when you look at your eyes, it's so clear like a pond. So when you look at them, you feel they would not cheat you with that kind of eyes. But in Korea, we see so many gangsters and also cheaters, and also in the parliament, when they show people. I don't know how to read face, but I feel that person is going to cheat, and later there's some lawsuit against that person. So I think I know how to read face nowadays. I'm not talented enough to look for other people, but I think I'm able to see. So when you actually pray, it is in order to make your heart come to one, not to divert it. The reason why you're not able to do it well is because your heart is not where it should be. When you try to gather it, your heart goes somewhere else. So it's just like baby, the kelp, which doesn't have, which is not wearing its its rope. So if you don't tie it, then the kelp goes everywhere. It's almost like that. So the method to catch the method is either to meditate or even is to meditate or to recite mantras. The other methods, it doesn't really apply. So you need to have a strong sense or power inside your heart. You feel like there is some other source which is making a house of thought in your head. So and it gathers and it becomes a stubbornness. Then because of their stubbornness, they eventually die. It creates a lot of great suffering. You can sleep on your grandmother's lap. So this hurt, you have to concentrate. If you concentrate, then the hurt that sways. When you see it sway, it's actually swaying in order to go for your benefits. But if you stand still and look at it, then you can know that actually it does nothing, then follow your desire. But if your heart stays still, then all the suffering or suffering that arises from your desire, they disappear. It should happen so. So here, not this line where you're going to live in the life of desire, but away from it. If you want to live in a happiness, then you have to make your heart stay the same. So if you want to taste the way, then even when you recite the mantras, you should at least recite Avalokitesvara for 10,000 times at least a day. So that's actually the practice of concentration. It is not, don't say things like it's good for your child. The person is going through the final examination of high school, and it's good if you pray this way or that way. So, in fear that you will not recite it when you ask, we just say it could be beneficial, but when it ends, we just say it is not really helpful, but your heart found peace. But those kind of mantras, it doesn't do anything for your test. Then people sitting on these rocks, they give away their knees and also their throat, and in order to pray. And those people who actually recite that hard, then they should at least get like 310 out of 300. If you think about Buddhism that way, then it means you have not even entered close to Buddha's teaching, and that's not even the proper door to open. It is not the door to enter. No matter how much you prostrate or how big the monastery is or how crowded the monastery is, and no matter how many people sitting at the chairs, so samadhi you have to keep practicing. Just don't keep answering. If you recite 10,000 times a day, if you do it for 10 days, it's 10 times, and 30 days, 30 times, then in an year, you do quite a lot. And if you do that, and if you do that amongst the time that you don't know, it will subside a lot. So normally keep praying, listening to teaching, and also reciting mantras and not doing bad things. That is a practice. If we add another one, then not being lazy. And even this laziness I have classified quite a lot of times. So going to hair salon religiously, that is not being active, that is very lazy. And really active people, they actively practice and they actively read and they actively pray and they act as per the teaching. We call that kind of people active people. But we do not say, since I am active person, I go shopping actively. But that is actually very lazy. You're living your life in an opposite way. So if I give you an extreme example, we do not say thief actively stealing. Do we call that? Do we call that lazy or active? If you see he's going around and checking if there's a CCTV in other people's houses, if there's a dog, if there's a CCTV, when they're going to empty house, that's the thing that they keep looking. We don't call that active.
그래서 삼매에 머물면서 지혜에 대한 수행을 하여 모든 장애를 완전히 제거해야 됩니다. 그러니까 항상 마음이 오락가락하는 마음이
So while being in samadhi, you have to practice wisdom and you have to remove all obstacles. So with your heart not swaying, if you practice, if you read the wisdom, what does it mean? You should also listen carefully. Before achieving samadhi, you have to listen to Buddha again and again, and you have to have the proper perception. You have to know about the voidness, dependent arising, samadhi. If you know them precisely, then next, the things that you know, if they have become yours, it isn't so. Although your thoughts might be organized, in fact, you are not actually able to do that. First, you need to have the right understanding like that, and samadhi. Then next, when is samadhi? Since your heart is as clear as a mirror, the right perception. With the right perception, and if you observe, then you can see the reality, and we call that wisdom. And then we are able to experiment that part. And then we say practice samatha and vipassana. With this, samatha is being practiced, and with the right perception, samatha gets formed. And with the clear mind of samatha, not the heart that's wise, and with at the process of samatha, if you use the right perception to observe, then you can see. And Buddha has said about the voidness that with the right mind, look clearly, and if you're able to observe the voidness, the futileness of it, then the attachments will disappear. And you'll be able to let go of the hand knowing that it is a rotten rope, or else you're not able to let it go. Normally, even when we say the greatness has disappeared, they don't even know what is the greatness. They don't even know which greatness, but instead they say, I am not very greedy. And when you ask what is the greatness, they are not really sure. Although they say, I'm not very greedy about clothes, but when you look at them, they wear one coat that's about $2,700. It's not right for them to say they're not greedy about clothes. So you should not talk not knowing what is the greatness. Once you know which greatness, even the saying that my greatness has disappeared will not be out of your mouth. That's why you have to learn so that you do not misunderstand Buddha's teaching. Only if you learn, you understand that you had so much greediness over here and there, and you try to let go of that greediness. We can finish this in 2 lines. It's very important. Likewise, even as said in the Sutra of the Heap of the Jewels, you need to be in Vinayana and discipline and achieve samadhi. So you have to follow the discipline, whether it's the 5-1 or the 10. You have to do it. So when we ask you to follow the discipline, you say it is burdensome, then later something more burdensome will come to you. Because you did not follow the discipline, your life could be at stake. You cannot go. You cannot try to avoid it.
그러면 이제 피해갈 수가 없어.
So therefore, even though discipline, when you follow, think about it.
아니 우리 생각해봤어요. 지금
In Arabic countries,
아랍 쪽에 IS
we heard quite a lot about the IS. They are nationalist.
이슬람의 원칙만 가지고 국가를 세우겠다.
They say they build country based on
막 그냥
the nation, and so they try to kill everyone who is against the nation, and they even destroy all the museums. We went to Pakistan, and they have destroyed all the statues.
이 주먹돌만 던져가지고.
And when I asked the guide why did they break off all the statues, they broke it in order to destroy the American nationalism. But what has American nationalism got to do with the statues?
나그 참 진짜.
I found that really weird.
그러니까 이제
So those IS,
세운 이런 사람들이 그
their basic principle, whether it's a religion or whatever it is, they do it in order to be happy. But if you try to become happy, or if your organization tries to become happy by killing others, I don't think that's something possible. And by murder, all the people in the world, they will come and they will try to kill them. And in a day, thousands of people will be dead.
개죽음 다 당하는 거야.
And will you be able to attain happiness in that way? So while shooting guns at each other and shooting missiles, will you be happy? That's something impossible. Even South Korea and North Korea, we should not try to strengthen our arms. We need to negotiate and converse, and we need to solve this, but it is not happening. So if the war happens, then everyone will be in disaster. And because of that,
분명히 계율에 꼭 계율 일상생활을 하는 것은
in your everyday life, you have to follow that discipline. For example, drinking and also smoking. You have to follow them. If you don't follow, I'm not asking you to drink. I'm asking you to follow not drinking.
그거로 인해서 우리나라에
I guess in a day, because of smoking and drinking, a lot of money is spent on curing them because of the disease from the drinking and smoking, and also car accidents because of drink and drive. But members of parliament, they sit and make laws, but
담배 가게다가 무슨 그
they just assume that putting bad pictures and also
그걸 갖다 논의를
I don't know what is there to discuss. Before one of the Yosu mayor, he was scolded from me that by smoking our original cigarette, we should increase the tax. And I saw that on the bus station, and so I called.
그래도 좋으니까 여수시 민여러분
But then it should actually be that although the tax reduced, you should not smoke in Yosu. So I called and said you should remove that right away, and he did. But by smoking our original cigarette, that doesn't make sense. And also some said by drinking our original alcohol. Before we had alcohol in every region.
술 어디에는 무슨 술 먹으래 무슨 소주 그래가지고
By drinking our original alcohol.
우리 고장 세수를 늘려줘요. 나는 술
Even if the tax collection is a little less, it's better if you don't get sick. Whether it's original liquor or it is, they should say you should drink less and not be sick. But
그렇게 정신이 오락가락한 것들이 시작이 돼가지고 되겠어.
and by abiding the discipline, you attain the samadhi. So if you do not attain samadhi, if you do not practice the discipline, then your attention cannot be concentrated. When we do fishing out in the sea, then the bait for the fishing, the fish doesn't eat the bait, but it just bites. So it's almost like if you do not abide the teaching, then it's just like being stuck by the needle of the fishing. You will be dragged wherever the fishing rod leads you, whether it's alcohol or violence. So you cannot attain samadhi. And so practicing or abiding the discipline itself is a door to the samadhi. If you have fight between husband and wife, then no matter how much you pray at home, it doesn't work out. So if you had a huge fight and if you recite Avalokitesvara, see if it works out. It doesn't. And when the rage comes and when you want to when you have something to blame, you just say, Avalokitesvara, please give him some punishment. So even the samadhi, it can never be attained if you drink. And if you want to have divorce after fight, then at the time, no matter what, whether it's mantras or praying, nothing works out. So if you want to have samadhi, then it's better if the house is at peace. It's good to have a house that's peaceful. And also, it's better not to fight and not drink. And for example, if you drink smoke a lot, and if you have lung cancer, then you cannot have samadhi. The house will be at chaos. That doesn't even happen even if you pray. Before someone, there was a time when a taxi was accompanied by someone else, that you can ride taxi with someone else, and then the person was drunk and he was like, Avalokitesvara, Avalokitesvara, the saint, are you sitting in the taxi? So I said, don't do at least one, whether it's reciting Avalokitesvara or not drinking. And then he said, Venerable monk, I should have a drink, and I should also recite mantras, but they don't happen together. If they can be done, practiced together, then I can also tell you to do it, but they don't happen together. Even if you do them together, they're not going to happen. Even the drinking is not fun, and so if I tell him you should not drink, but he's already too much into alcohol. He's someone that I know a little, but he died of alcohol. He had liver cancer and he died. And after attaining samadhi, even after attaining samadhi, it's not the end when you achieve samadhi, but even after attaining samadhi, you should practice the samantha. With the wisdom, after attaining the pure wisdom, so prajna is the pure wisdom. Then the thought, because of your greed, it disappears a little, and you're able to view the wall with voidness. It's not only the words, but there you'll be able to practice it because they are actually void. So there, even if you're clinging onto it, they disappear just like a smoke, and everything that you believe. Because they don't have a figure, at some point of time you realize that they don't exist and they just disappear out of your grasp. Even your husbands, even if you die sooner, it happens to both of you. If you burn your body at the cemetery or your husband's body, then if you just blow it away, then nothing remains. Because you had the relation, so just as a friends, you live together until your relation expires. It's actually nothing. After all this life, you find it not very meaningful. Was there something special? The more you age, the more you try to stay with your husband, you understand that there's nothing special about it. Before you thought there could be something special, but as he grew older, he doesn't even know how to eat his own food, and there isn't much special. So you just sit together and you talk about each other that you should die first so that I can bury you. But again, it's all the time like, oh, you die first and I'll follow you. But what is there to follow? You just live and you die when your time comes. It's my thing that as you grow older, the love should also die a little because there are some people, if the affection is too much, then they also commit suicide to follow. They are them and I'm I. So if they want to go first, you should say, go first, I will live a little and I'll follow you. You should not say things like, oh, I'll follow you right after. Even when you take the taxi, it's the same. So in the taxi, the first car should go first and the second car should follow. So after attaining the pure wisdom, if you have the pure wisdom, the prana wisdom, then discipline itself, it also gets completed. Why is that so? The acting and also thinking and speaking, if they become one, then even the discipline, it also gets achieved. So even the murder, when someone asks them to commit murder, if they do not die themselves, they never commit murder. In order to achieve the target for me, myself, and for others, we have to remove all the obstacles. So my happiness does not come with other people's suffering. It comes together with the other people's happiness. So even the believers of Buddhism, they said you should not practice practice those kind of shoppings. So like coffin, selling the coffins. I thought about there is also the time when I wanted to do a little business about a funeral, but because of the discipline, I decided not to if you say I hope my business goes well, that's also in line with you wish a lot of people die. So you have that kind of bad thoughts. Think about it. Hospitals, they earn a lot of money. What does it mean? That means the hospital wants a lot of people to be sick. So the doctor, they should always think, even if I live a poor life, I hope a lot of people are not sick. So they should think about it in that way too. But if they do not think well, then they can also become criminals or sinners. So today I don't have so much patience, so my heart is at peace. They should think in that way.
생각해보면
If you think about it, living is not easy.
그렇죠? 예? 쉬운 일이 아니야. 그래서
So
나와 남이 더불어서 같이
in order to become happy, both myself and others, you have to remove everything that's obstructing them. And the essence that is selfishness and also stubbornness. In this way, if you attain the supramundane wisdom, you have to practice samatha first.
이게 지금 지품이죠. 그래서
So the practice of samatha should be practiced first. So normally, after doing something,
내가 다
you should not say that after studying something, I should practice samatha. But even when you're listening to this teaching, you should recite mantras. Then together, you will be able to see that it pacifies and the wisdom grows. First, you have to practice the samatha.
들어있는 동안 진여를 깨달은 지혜로서
While in samatha,
관을 이렇게
the practitioner who can analyze the phenomenon with the wisdom, you can raise the vipassana.
이루어져야 이게 마치 뭐와 같으냐면
Because there is no wavelength where your heart moves, it becomes as clear as a mirror.
맑아져서
When we say it is clear as a mirror, that means my greediness in my heart that disappeared.
욕심으로 왔다 갔다 하는 생각이 없다는 뜻이죠. 그죠?
And so with our heart that is so clear like the mirror, when you see an object,
이럴 때는
for example, when Buddha was looking at someone else, it is there in Pranya Paramita.
관자재보살 행심반야 바람일다 시조견
So you're observing with the reflection. There is vipassana.
몸을 우리를 구성하고 있는 색이라는 게 지수합동 색하고 감수작용, 그 받아들이는 감수작용, 그 기관을 통해서 생각작용, 행 의지작용, 식
The
마음작용. 이
the practice of seeing, observing, and also reflection, all these
계공 모두 다
all of them, they're all void. So they were all empty and they did not exist.
실체하지 않는 것이고 실체가 없는 것이라고 이렇게
So when you look at it, realizing that they don't exist, then your attachment to the body disappears. Even the attachment to your body disappears. Only if it disappears, then
이제 이게
the attachment ends
애착이 끊어지면서
and you start living not for yourself. Then only you are able to practice the disciplines.
수행에는 세 가지
There are three definite methods of sequence to practice. if you study a little deeper, then in the content it's written that with the wisdom you can achieve the pure wisdom, the complete supramundane wisdom. Only with its seed we can show the darkness, you can reflect the darkness. But
근데 이제 우리가 이제 출세간에 이를테면
in Buddha's word, the Supramundane Wall refers to Bodhisattva.
이 세간의 욕심
From this mundane wall, the greed, you distance yourself and you live a true way. And with the Buddha and or Sattva as the model of your life, then even the small seed, just like a light, it becomes brighter.
그래서 우리가
So when you plant
벽실을 심어
the right seed
그 작은
in the farm, and even the small seed, it grows, and
모습이 점점 더
when it grows, then it changes the whole farm into a green farm. Just like that, in our heart, if we have the sense of bodhisattva and also the virtuous thoughts when they start rising, then our heart gradually changes to a virtuous heart and it becomes a light to everyone. It becomes a wisdom to everyone. It becomes a strength that leads everyone. With the wisdom that is only understood, the mundane wisdom, no matter how strong its power is, we cannot say that's a perfect wisdom. So, with this kind of wisdom, you're not in a situation where you can be free from any kind of suffering.
지식적인 것을 우리가
So, with this kind of knowledge, if we do a little training, then
큰 것보다는
it provides us help to understand its concept. So nowadays,
요즘에는 이 전부 다 머리들로 다 이게 막 그냥
since everyone goes to university and they study language since they were in kindergarten, they complete doctoral degrees. So they are very good with understanding, but they do not actually put that into practice.
실제로는
When they ask them to do a virtuous act,
선한 이런 거 말뭐
from their speeches, it seems like they do all the virtuous things in the world, but when you actually check them, they do not do anything much.
보니까 뭐 우리 지금 우리
The present educational system, elementary school, middle school, and also high school, those people after completing, there are less people who actually contribute to others. They are more selfish because during their educational system, they were not taught how to contribute to others. In fact, they are less than a grandmother in a village. Therefore, as a result, you need to have wisdom for the absolute truth. And what is this, the absolute truth? It is the fact regarding the voidness. Everything doesn't have its form and everything changes. And therefore, there is no sense of I.
하는 것을 갖다 확인한 거란 말이야. 그게 공성에 대해서 그래서 이제 우리 저 나가르주나 용수보살 같은 이가
So, Nagarjuna has spoken about this in detail, and also Buddha has spoken about voidness for 21 years. There are more than 600 copies.
반야고 600개.
Buddha spoke for 21 years,
21년 동안은
and they heard about the prana, and Buddha spoke about this again and again so that his disciples could understand.
자꾸 이끌어 주셨단 말이에요.
In this context, the complete supramundane wisdom refers to omniscience. We say omniscience,
얘기하는데 일체
and we also say the great enlightenment.
종교가 큰 깨달음 그렇게 얘기하기도 한단 말이에요. 그래서 이게 뭐냐면
When you say the great wisdom, when you have attained the complete wisdom, by attaining the complete voidness,
완벽한 공성을 체득함으로써 이
you
세상의
understood every
모든
system that goes on in this world. So when you're looking at human, you're also looking at his past and present and also future. Because he lived his life that way, his life is going to be like that in future, and you can also read the present.
삼세인가가 전부 다 아는 것이다.
Therefore, in order to achieve omniscience, you have to remove the darkness of enlightenment, which is agony. So when it is dark, you cannot see.
어두울 때는 안 보이잖아요, 그죠?
But when you have switched on the light, you can see everything, the color and also the brightness. And likewise, Buddha spoke in his Diamond Sutra
부처님께서 건강님 말씀
that
연종종색이라.
the sun shines, and when the sun shines,
해가 비칠 때
you can see the different light and color and the shape. Everything comes into its understanding. So what is darkness? Darkness refers to selfishness and also greed and
탐진치 그걸 이기심 그걸 나누면
the three different kinds of suffering. So only when all your three different kinds of suffering disappears, the darkness disappears.
그걸
Without removing them, we cannot choose the way of lightening. But again and again, the greed and also anger and also the foolish thought,
어리석은 생각을 갖다
without practicing how to get rid of them.
하지 않고서는
When we say we know something, it only refers to wisdom, but it does not help you at all. In fact,
아무런 도움이 개등에 소금 먹기야.
it's almost like you put salt on the backside of the dog, but they have no idea, so
있지 않기에 그 등에다 소금을 흩어봐야 뭐 개가 무슨
it's almost like that.
아무 상관없어. 개등에 소금 먹기야.
Therefore,
그래서 어둠을
removing the darkness, and what is the darkness?
그 어둠이 무엇이냐? 그건 만약에 뭐
If you pray for 10 years and if you have meditated for 10 years, if you're only obsessed with the method without the target, without the sense of target, if you have meditated in order to get rid of the agony, if you do not have the kind of motivation, then no matter how much you pray, even if it's 10 years, 20 years, the darkness will not get brighter. The darkness will not get brighter, but it will only get darker. So eventually, if you only pray for the virtue, then the monastery also get ruined, so as the person who prayed.
같이 일본 말로 가부시키로 망이고 망.
You ruin together.
같이 망해.
So although you have prayed the same, it isn't so.
아니야. 똑같이
If you have prayed knowing everything, then you have to follow as a method,
방식
and also the method is written in the Thousand Hand Sutra, but it isn't so. If you know the contents well, and if you have not tried so that your heart changes, then even if you pray for 100 days, then your heart only gets darker.
아니라니까. 제발 좀.
Please, it is not the same everywhere. I told you this story before.
얘기 전에 했잖아요. 일지선사라고
You heard the story about losing a finger. So when everyone came and asked the monk, he would raise a finger and say, "Oh, do you understand?" And his disciple, about 17 to 18 years, for him it was so easy because he only raised his hand. So
그래 옛날에 이제 어떤 일지선사가
because there's no car like nowadays in olden times. So when they go out, they would walk for many months. And so he asked disciples to take care of their house, and a guest came to listen to his story. So you don't even know when he's going to come back, and he's like, I'm not really sure.
잘 모르겠습니다.
And he was like, he really had to listen to the teaching. And he said, it's very easy. My teacher's teaching. I'll do it for you. And so he wore his complete monk robes, and he prayed, he prostrated 3 times, and he did exactly the same.
그래서 그 객성이
And so he prostrated 3 times and wore the monk robe, and he asked, what is Buddha's teaching? And he raised his finger. So even the person who raised the finger and those who listened, they are not sure. So they just said and just left it. But when the monk came, the guest went off, and since it is not even holy, so he just there's no effect at all. But what is that when he said he has a stomach ache, and so eat this. I had some stomach ache, and after I ate it was okay. But the stomach ache, there are hundreds of different reasons why the stomach hurts, but this person only thought there's only one cure. So he thought maybe if he eats this medicine that he took, he'll get better. And if it doesn't get better, then that's it. But there shouldn't be actually.
그래서 이제
So this person, when his teacher came,
선생님 돌아오시면
and he kind of showed off saying that when you were not here, I did the teaching. And he was like, how did you do? And
뭐라고 본 적이 없고
I did the same how you did. I was prostrated and I lifted my finger. And he was like, oh, did you?
그래 그러나
Good job. I'm going to ask you a question. Now can you answer?
네가 한번 대답해.
Yes, I did so.
예 그럼 그렇게 하죠 뭐.
So he sat down,
지도 이제 안고서
and when the teacher prostrated, and
그러면서
when he was asked what is Buddha's teaching, and when he lifted his finger, he cut off the finger.
손가락에 탁 떨어졌다. 이때를 당해서 어떤 거?
So it's the being here, it isn't being here. So when you're talking about the Buddha's teaching, you shouldn't actually act like you understand what is Buddha's teaching. So the person in an instant,
인간에
it is not being there and being not there, but it is voidness. He felt it at that moment.
체험을 한 거라고.
You look at being there and not being there,
그죠?
but we are not actually looking at being there or not being there. We are not looking at Buddha's teaching in that way. So when you achieve omniscience,
해탈에
the enlightenment,
내가 해탈이라는
enlightenment means being free,
자유롭다는
and from which you are being free from the suffering.
번뇌가 윤회거든.
Because the suffering itself is samsara, so you are being free from the darkness.
그 어둠으로부터 이제 완전히 벗어났다 그런 뜻이야.
So therefore, we don't try to get rid of the darkness,
그 어둠을 제거하면
but once you start getting rid of the darkness, it becomes brighter. So when we say we have become brighter, we have removed the darkness. But what do? We try to pray. We try to pray for the virtue, and we pray to God or whether it's Buddha. But it is not actually the act of praying. We are actually putting on the light. So it is written.
그의 법의 불을 밝히는 것인데 법이라는 것은 뭐냐면
And what is teaching? What is the discipline here? It is actually brightening, and there is the prana.
봉계동. 봉계동이 그거.
Where are you from? Bongedong. Bongedong actually refers to Bong. There refers to Buddha. While living there, if you don't study Buddhist teaching, then it is useless.
같이 왔어요, 봉계동?
If you don't study there, then it is not Buddha's village. It is actually the suffering's village. It is so actually.
진짜 그래요.
It refers to Buddha.
공항은 그 임금 상징이기도 하지만 저 어디야 순천에 가면 정회사 있는데 그거가 그 개족산이거든. 닭개자인데 닭이 그게 봉황닭이야. 닭발처럼 생겼다. 왜 닭발일까? 개족이야.
The phoenix, or the Bongedong phoenix, also refers to Buddha. It only not refers to the king. But here, in the Suncheon, the village is named after the phoenix because it also looks like the chicken's feet. It is a little complicated to listen, right? Have you heard about this before? If you haven't heard about it, it's of course difficult. So in the elementary school, it takes a long time for the student to know 1 plus 1 equals 2. But you came at the time when it is the most difficult. In the front, it was a little easier. So if you go to Sakchon Monastery online, then you can find it on YouTube. So have a look at it. You should have a look at it. Only with the wisdom, it is impossible to get rid of 2 obstacles. And obstacles only with the wisdom. Here, the wisdom doesn't refer to the wisdom, but it refers to the knowledge. So only with the things that you know, it does not end. For example, it is almost like that those alcoholics, although they know it is good to quit drinking, but they are not able to quit it. But even if they quit it, even if they decide they are not going to eat from today, the talent who is on MBC nowadays,
그 사람은 담배 끊었다 5개월째인가 끊었다 그러더니 어저께 텔레비 보니까 담배가 하도 피우고.
He said he quit smoking for about 5 months, and because he wanted to quit, he was just standing and murmuring, and it was almost like hypnotizing themselves. It's when it becomes a habit, it's very difficult to quit. So although you know that it's good to quit when you're smoking, it is difficult to quit. But then the act of quitting, we call it discipline. And after knowing it, not smoking, drinking a lot of water and eating candy and exercising, and although you do them, you still have habits. The act of ending it does not end only with the Samantha. So you cannot quit it. I'm giving you just an example. It does not end just by staying at home and not meeting friends, but you need to observe again and again.
그게 얼마나
Having lung cancer and gets rotten, and or having the mouth cancer or skin cancer or liver cancer or lung cancer, and if you observe how they die, then even when the heart is rising, they just disappear, and in the end your the agony
번뇌장은 거칠은 번뇌
in the consciousness. So only with the wisdom it doesn't disappear. If you do not have the discipline or without the samadhi, you can meet them again. So you need to follow the discipline and you have to practice the samatha, and only then they will end. And while doing that, you will reach a very comfortable stage.
계정의 사막이야 그러니까 그로 끊어진단 말이야.
The wisdom that they talk here, it is not only it's not only from the understanding and hearing, but it is actually a consequence of actual practice. So the wisdom, we do not say it's a wisdom without actually just having the proper understanding it. What Buddha said is a speech of wisdom, but how I accept it, because I have not been able to accept it as it is only merely only knowledge. So the wisdom which is not put into practice only as if it is also a Buddha's teaching, but it just merely becomes the knowledge. So you have to put into practice. Without actual practice, you will not become so. So in Buddhism, we call it practice. We say practice here. We say the act of act.
그래서 불교에서 수행 그렇게 얘기해. 행이라고 꼭 얘기해. 행자를 꼭 쓴단 말이야.
Therefore, in order to achieve the vipassana for the absolute reality, absolute being, you have to practice, you have to get used to samatha first. So you have to get used to samatha first. So if you keep reciting mantras,
먼저 사마타행을 해야 된다. 그 여러분도 계속 지금
then your heart will start suppressing, and if you put into concentration, then although the samatha is not being put into practice through certain target, we know that that is a useless saying. That is also and that is actually saying that is not being swayed, and you will come to know everything, and you will come to a stage where you restrain yourself. In order to achieve samadhi, you have to get past sinking and also floating. And in order to remove them, in order to get away from them, you have to practice that discipline first. So having the proper perception, and you have to put into practice. If there's a question, ask me. Was there a question on internet? If there's any question, let me know.